story is he disappeared from his grandparents' sheep farm in very remote outback of Australia. I think it's about 300 kilometres north of Adelaide, but middle of nowhere, absolute middle of nowhere.
What the hell is going on? This insular family might have a lot more to say than they are publicly. I mean, the last time we spoke, you know, we were quite hopeful. It was about 2 weeks after he'd been reported missing. And we still thought, you know, there might be a chance that we might know of anyone who's seen him or some tracings. We had, you know, Indigenous trackers going around looking at if there were birds up above this barren landscape to see if they could see anyone going for remains. There wasn't any of that. Now, the quote that I want to tell you is what Josie said in a very rare public statement. She said, "We're still looking for him. You can't help. We are dealing with this." And then obviously she's met this reporter with a shotgun. So I'm just starting to think that Josie isn't exactly the flowery grandmother that the media once painted her out to be. I'm not putting anything on her. I'm not alleging her of anything, but she is the last person who saw him.
Well, some might say she's not, he is not her.
Well, you know, you've got to be careful these days, Kev.
It's a trans, Josie is trans, you know, was biologically male, so that may or may not be relevant to this very strange story. But as you say, the initial theories were wild animals, dingoes or something may have eaten this kid, may have dragged him away, but no sign of any struggle, or that someone somehow had got hold of him and put him in a truck. But that's the nearest road, the nearest track, I think, is...
Leading up to the property is actually 50 kilometres long in itself, I'm pretty sure. So if you were to come down into that private property, take the child and leave, that would have created a massive havoc. And
there was this fake video made, wasn't there? AI video that made it look as if some guy was putting this poor... He's got a little massive, a mop of curly white hair, very distinctive looking kid.
Yeah.
That was a fake. This kid could have gone missing, God knows how, many months before. For some reason, they raised the alarm at the end of September.
The father who was fighting with Josie, the transgender grandmother, so the parents were still together, but they lived apart. The mother lived with Josie and the father lived separately. He hadn't seen the son in about 2 to 3 weeks, I think. Now, I would probably believe him, to be honest, over this grandmother who last saw him, or allegedly last saw him beforehand. So all we know about this grandmother is that her dad was a POW and an absolute hard nut. He was actually... He was known as the patriarch scared by the horrors of war. So her father was totally tough, and that reveals a lot about who this Josie might be.
Extraordinary story. We'll keep you in touch with it. We'll keep you updated on it. But no sign of this kid. When did he go missing? Was it 6 months ago? Did something bad happen to him? What are this family all about? Shotguns? Reporters knocking on the door with pump? Come on.
The disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont from his remote family homestead on September 27, 2025, discarded this script from the very beginning. In its place, a different, more unsettling narrative began to form, one not defined by what was said, but by what was left unsaid. Not by unified grief, but by a conspicuous and puzzling silence. As the massive initial search efforts yielded nothing but a single, ambiguous footprint, the void left by the missing boy began to be filled with the echoes of unanswered questions. The focus of the investigation and of a captivated, concerned public has slowly, inexorably pivoted from the vast, unfortifying outback surrounding the property to the very heart of the home itself. The central mystery is no longer just where is Gus, but what truly happened in the hours before he was reported missing, and why does the official account of those hours feel so profoundly wrong? The most deafening absence in the public sphere has been the voice of Gus's parents. In the weeks since their son vanished, Josh, the father, has maintained a near-total public silence. He has not stood before cameras, his face a mask of torment, begging for his son's safe return. He has not joined the grandmother, the primary public face of the family's distress, in her limited appeals. Instead, unverified reports from sources close to the investigation indicate that he moved back in with the grandparents amid what are described as significant familial tensions. This retreat, this inward turn at a moment when most parents would be outwardly projecting their desperation, has not gone unnoticed. Is this the behavior of a man paralyzed by a grief so profound it has rendered him incapable of public performance? Or is it the strategic withdrawal of someone avoiding the scrutiny that a camera's lens brings? Even more withdrawn is the mother, Jessica. She has become a ghost in her own tragedy, entirely absent from the media landscape. While the instinct to shield a grieving parent from the public eye is understandable, the completeness of her disappearance is, to many observers, atypical. In the anatomy of a missing child case, the mother's voice is often the most compelling, the most emotionally resonant. Her silence is a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes speculation. Is she being protected by the family, her grief too fragile to bear the spotlight? Or is there a more disturbing reason for her absence? Could she be operating under pressure, or even fear, from within her own family circle? The questions hang in the air, heavy and unignorable. Why would a mother not use every single tool at her disposal, including the irresistible power of her own tears, to plead for her child's return? The public sees an empty chair where a weeping mother should be, and trust, once lost, is difficult to reclaim. This familial silence is compounded by what investigators are now critically examining as the core of the case, the official timeline. The story presented was that Gus was last seen by his grandmother at approximately 5:30 p.m., playing on a dirt mound. A brief period of inattention followed, and he was discovered missing. This timeline triggered the massive, well-documented search. However, this timeline is now under a microscope. Rumors from within the investigation suggest that detectives are actively working on a theory that Gus vanished significantly earlier than reported. The implications of this are catastrophic. If the clock did not start ticking at 5:30 p.m., but hours earlier, then the entire initial search, the most crucial period for finding a lost child alive, was conducted under a false premise. Precious daylight hours were wasted. Scent trails grew cold. The search perimeter was fundamentally flawed from the outset. The physical evidence from the search itself lends credence to this theory. The trained search and rescue dogs, capable of picking up a scent trail days old, reportedly found nothing. Not a single track. Not a thread from his blue Minion shirt. In an environment that holds traces, the complete lack of any trail is not just odd. It is, according to some experts, a red flag. It suggests that the child may not have traveled through that terrain at the time the search was conducted. If Gus had been moved from the property hours before the search began, the absence of a trail is exactly what one would expect. The delayed reporting theory transforms the narrative from a tragic accident into a potential deliberate concealment. This leads to the inevitable and deeply uncomfortable question of motive. What could compel a family to delay reporting a child missing? The answers, while speculative, point to complex and dark family dynamics. Unverified reports from acquaintances and leaked background checks hint at a household under strain. There were whispers of emotional distance between certain family members, of financial pressures bearing down on the isolated homestead, and of underlying tensions related to the inheritance and management of the valuable property itself. Could a tragic accident have occurred within the home, prompting a panicked decision to fabricate a disappearance to avoid blame or scrutiny? Could the motives be even more convoluted, involving custody disputes or internal family conflicts that escalated in an unthinkable way? The delayed reporting theory provides a possible reason for the strange behavior and the shifting stories. Amid this morass of silence and suspicion, a single piece of verified evidence has recently emerged, catapulting the investigation in a new and definitive direction. Earlier, the case was muddied by a malicious hoax audio clip. But now, investigators have confirmed the authenticity of a different recording. This one features the voice of a frightened woman, a local from the area, who claims to have witnessed something unsettling near the Lamont property around the time of the disappearance. Her identity is protected, her voice altered in public releases, but her terror is palpable and, crucially, deemed genuine by authorities. She is not a hoaxer. She is a true witness, and she is reportedly terrified to come forward publicly. The content of her testimony remains largely under wraps, but its confirmation has had an electric effect on the investigation. It provides an external, corroborating piece of the puzzle that does not rely on the family's account. It suggests that someone else saw something that aligned not with the story of a wandering child, but with a more disturbing sequence of events. This witness's fear is itself a data point. Is she afraid of being associated with the tragedy? Or is she afraid of someone involved in it? The verified audio has forced a dramatic re-examination of the entire case. Task Force Horizon is now rebuilding its timeline from the ground up, using this witness's account as a new fixed point. The property itself is being re-scrutinized not as the point from which a child wandered, but as the potential epicenter of a concealed incident. Every outbuilding, every vehicle, every digital footprint from the family in the hours before 5:30 p.m. is now of critical importance. The search is no longer for a little boy who walked away. It is for the truth about what happened to a little boy who never left the property alive, and the hours that were stolen from those who were trying to find him. The case of Gus Lamont has become a chilling lesson in the power of silence and the fragility of a timeline. It reveals how the absence of expected emotion can be as telling as its presence. It demonstrates that the first story told in a crisis is not always the true one, and that the most critical clues are sometimes not what is found, but what is missing. The unanswered questions now form the core of the mystery. What did that frightened woman truly see? What is the real reason a mother's voice has never been heard? And what happened during the unspoken, unaccounted for hours that have now become the most important hours in the search for Gus Lamont? The investigation is active and ongoing. Anyone with information is urged to contact the relevant authorities.